Hello ladies and gents, hope you're all well. You joined me in Dagenham and we're going to be having a lovely one today. It's a museum visit with some lovely house and grounds. This is all that remains of its original moat, but when we go around this way, Valence House Museum, a medieval manor belonging to the Valence family. It went through several generations and different families over its long life before it became a museum. So yeah, you get some nice views of the moat through there. I do read out quite a lot of the descriptions in this one, and obviously pause for you ladies and gents to read some, but yeah, it's an interesting one. It shuts for lunch at 12, so I'm just doing the outside and exterior scenes while that occurs, and I shall be back in. But this is the house. There's medieval parts, a lot of it is 18th, 17th and 18th century with some Victorian additions as well. There was once a 1920s concrete council building here, but it was moved, thankfully. Lovely old house, look. And it's a big old museum as well, this one, like Eastbury Manor Hall or Eastbury Manor House. This one's quite big. Over that way, look, you've got a rusty looking old car over there, so we'll have a look at that in a minute. This place also holds the archives for Barking and Dagenham. They hold the records for St Margaret's Church in Barking. That's another reason why I'm here today. So yeah, that should be nice. Let's take a picture of that. There we go. It's nice to see an old house like this being well cared for and looked after. Alright, cheers. This here, look, his name is the Barking or Dagenham Idol. It's one of the oldest representations of a human being, and you'll see the original wooden piece of it inside that was found in the Barking marshes in the 1920s. That's really fascinating. It's one of the oldest representations of a human figure. So that's bloody interesting, isn't it? If you come to the museum, this is where you get into the museum. We'll walk back round and then we'll walk over to this car. This is our intro. History on this one's all included in this part one. Once we get inside the house, you've got the history of the house, the families that lived in it, and when it became a museum and all that. And an absolutely beautiful model from the 1920s of the house. It's very nice, such pretties. We're lucky to have places like this to come to. Now we'll walk over to this car. And this is one of the ones I've been wanting to see, because a friend of mine told me about this. He said, oh, you must go and have a look when you go to the museum. Have a look at the rusty old car that's there. So the rusty old car that's there we shall look at. Here it is. Whether this was no, I don't think that was a real car. The whole thing's made from metal. That's brilliant. I like that. That'll make a good profile picture for the page. RJ Baldwin 2010. Well, If ever RJ Baldwin watches this video, absolutely deserves a shout out for this one. This is fantastic. And that you shall see as a profile picture for the page at some point. That's very good. I like anything like that. If we go around this way, I believe this is the way into the archives department. I think. Because I've not been here since I was 17. Which was some time ago, my dears. It was some time ago. It's part of its gardens. The archives department is round this way, I believe. Herb garden and the victory plot. So we'll probably have a look at that last. Valence House, a place of discovery. It's changed since I last came here, I must admit. Right, join me back round the front and you'll join me for inside.
You like to have a look around, yeah? Fantastic. Would you like to come to our Christmas market? That's coming up, and a cocktail evening as well.
Valence House Museum, different one for us today. In medieval times, all the land in Barking and Dagenham and Ilford was part of the Manor of Barking and owned and administered by Barking Abbey. With this land holding were many smaller manors, including the Manor of Valence, which rented out to generate income for the abbey. The earliest reference to this dates from 1269, when its lease was transferred from one owner to another. That's this document here. What's in a name? In 1291, Agnes de Valence moved to the property after the death of her third husband. She was of noble birth, with royal connections. Her grandmother was Isabella of Angoulême, wife of King John of England. After a life of arranged marriages, Agnes settled here, although the de Valences were only associated with Dagenham for 51 years, their name lived on. Growth and prosperity. By 1345, Barking Abbey had sold the manor of Valence to St Anthony's Hospital, London. 40 years later, King Edward IV granted custody of St Anthony's, including Valence, to the Dean and Chapter of Windsor. Throughout its history, the property was rented to a series of tenants. The wealthy families who lived at Valence never actually owned it, but did much to increase its size and wealth. Valence Manor grew to be the largest in Dagenham, absorbing the small manors of Frislands, Gallants and East Hall. With agricultural land, woodland, heathland, marshland, Valence was self-sustainable and extremely profitable. When its lease was sold in 1803, Valence Manor had 6 farms, which brought in a total income of £11,000 a year, the equivalent of £400,000 today. The changing face. Over the centuries, the appearance of Valence House and its grounds has changed many times. Medieval roots, the original medieval timber-framed house that dates from the 1400s, faced north towards Green Lane. Remnants of its jettied upper floor can still be seen. The house shows evidence of building phases from every century from the 1400s onwards. Around the house, a rectangular moat acted as part status symbol and part coral, keeping in animals and serving as a fish pond. At some point, the orientation of the house was reversed and the present entrance created. A home fit for a gentleman. Each new tenant expanded and modernised the house and landscape according to their wealth and social status. The manor house with its farm buildings gradually evolved into a residential house surrounded by gardens. In the 18th century, the Mertens family remodelled the property with an emphasis on genteel living. The eastern wing was rebuilt with fashionably large windows. The moat was widened and evergreens planted to ensure privacy. Despite these touches of grandeur, the rest of the grounds were still those of a working farm, with yards, stables, pigeon houses and vegetable gardens. When the May family arrived in the 1870s, the property was completely residential, with the farm work transferred to Burley's farm on Green Lane. To disguise its medieval construction, the house had been plastered, then scored to make it look like stone. The gardens included flower beds, a walkway of hazel trees, a walled garden with greenhouses and storehouses for growing grapes, apricots and peaches. Each new tenant expanded and modernised the house and landscape according to their wealth and social status. Residents. Many people have lived at Valence House over the centuries. Some were key figures in history of the house, whilst others had an interesting history of their own. Thomas May. Thomas May again. Thomas May in the grounds of Valence House with his wife Helen and their daughter Mary. A rose garden on the western side of the house. Seated on the left is Helen May. Helen May. Thomas Bonham. In 1635, this prosperous London lawyer rented Valence estate. His colourful and eccentric life caused many local scandals, not least when he and his wife ended up in Colchester jail. When he died in 1676, the inscription on his tomb inside Dagenham Parish Church made it clear that modesty was not his prime virtue. And I think this is the verse. Stay, a wayfarer, lest you be ignorant, who is buried here. It is worth your while to know that it is Thomas Bonham, Esquire, Lord of Valentia in Essex. He is ever to be praised, and can never, alas, be sufficiently lamented. This marble cannot contain his other virtues, nor indeed scarcely would the quarry itself from which it was hewn. Oh, that's modest. The Mertens family. 1719, the estate was leased to Henry Mertens, a merchant tailor whose brother was Lord Mayor of London. This wealthy family used the house as their main home, making many alterations. When Henry died in 1725, the lease passed to his son, John Henry Mertens, who built the east wing and installed a new grand staircase. He was succeeded by his grandson, Henry Mertens Bird, in 1776. Henry supported the fledgling United States of America after the American War of Independence, campaigned for trade with the country to be restored. In the early 1800s, his American banking company collapsed, forcing him to sell Valence estate lease. And the May family. Thomas May, his wife, 6 children, and his mother-in-law Eliza Luxmore moved to Valence House in 1879. They lived here for 40 years, increasing their number with further 5 children. Thomas was a farmer and market gardener, and gained fame from introducing commercial tomato growing to Dagenham. He was also a breeder of Shire horses and formed the Essex Foal Show Society. When Thomas died in 1913, his son Robert managed the farm until compulsory purchase of the estate in 1921. The favourite game of the May children was funerals. They would borrow their father's cigar box and use it to bury their dolls in the garden. Loads of kids like that, don't they? Survey of Valence House estate taken in 1649. This lists the rooms inside the house, the extent of the external lands, and shows that the building at this time was much larger than the house that stands today. Look, it's a lovely old wood panelled room as well. I do like wood panelling, I must admit. Model of Valence House, 1921. This model shows Valence House in the last years of its use as a family home. You can see the kitchen, garden, greenhouses at the back and the paddock to the front. The moat still surrounds the property, and the 17th century barn still stands to the south. Look, the moat still completely surrounded the house back then. That's interesting. Nice old marble fireplace, obviously not in use anymore. From Manor to Museum. In 1921, the London County Council bought Valence House as part of its new Becontree estate housing scheme. The council bought up local land through compulsory purchase orders. The manor houses, Parslows, Porters and Jenkins, were demolished to make way for the new development. Valence House had also been earmarked for demolition, but was saved in 1926 when it was purchased by the newly formed Dagenham Urban District Council and needed office accommodation. In 1929, a concrete and steel extension was added to the east wing to create a council chamber on the first floor. The council offices remained there until 1937, when they were moved into the new civic centre at Becontree Heath. The house then became the headquarters of the borough's library service. The old council chamber was used as an extension space for a growing local history collection. During the Second World War, Valence House was used as an air raid precautions ARP and fire watch post. Staff distributed gas masks and ration books to local residents. From 1940, the Dagenham Women's Voluntary Service was based at the house. Its members staffed rest centres and mobile canteens and issued clothing and other essentials to people whose homes had been bombed. In April 1941, the house suffered minor damage during an air raid. After the war, the museum exhibits expanded to fill several smaller rooms, in addition to the original gallery. When the library service vacated the premises in 1974, the house officially opened to the public as a local history museum for Barking and Dagenham. The bones of Valence House. Valence House is the only surviving manor house in Dagenham. Although it has been altered over the centuries, it still has parts of its original 15th and 17th century structures. Valence House is a traditional timber frame building. The oldest walls are made of wattle and daub, one of the world's oldest building methods. These gaps between the timbers contain woven panels that have been covered with a mixture of clay, animal dung and horsehair. You can see tufts of hair sticking out the piece of the wall plaster displayed here. As you explore Valence House, look out for the old fireplaces and cupboards built into the walls. These have also been used to help date different parts of the building. Oh yeah, look, you can see the horsehair sticking out of it. And that is a piece of wattle and daub. A list of the items, so just pause to read anything you want to. Right, I'm going to have a look what this is. Armorial teapot, made to commemorate the marriage of Mary Mertins to Robert Byrd in 1747. It bears the arms of Mary's parents, John Henry Mertins and Bridget Peck, rather than the arms of Mary and Robert, as the Byrd family did not have a coat of arms. Oh look, on kind loan from the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. Now, join me over there in that room for part 2.